online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM. This is Wycombe Sound, the Wycombe Wanderers Show.
Welcome along to the latest edition of the Wycombe Wanderers Show. I don't know why I said that. It's clearly obvious in the and the announcing bit what's happening. Myself and Bob are with you for the next hour discussing how did you describe it? Was it the eye-watering?
Yes, eye-watering and yawn-inducing. Though if you want to use the same one for both, you could just say, you felt like you had to hide your eyes against Brentford and then probably wanted to hide your eyes against Birmingham.
There's a lot of eye covering involved in both games. We'll hear from manager Gareth Ainsworth talking about both fixtures which have happened since our last programme. Also as well, we'll pay tribute to Sandy Durden as well. Plus, we will also be hearing from David Wheeler. So today is Time to Talk Day, where you are encouraged to speak about your mental health and how you are feeling. We will hear from David in conversation with Wycombe fan Tom Hancock. And also we'll be catching up with the chairman and co-founder of the Wycombe Wanderers Ex-Players Association, sorry. I chucked in a supporters there. That would have been the WWESPA, but that's not what they're called.
It would have to be quite a big sort of like organisation maybe. And also ex-supporters, well, what does that mean? Well, they've given up and gone off and supported like Mansfield or something.
Maybe. Also, I'd like to say a very big hello to Will the Chef.
Hello.
This should have been in last week's show, but I forgot. Basically, Will the Chef has done fantastic work. We had him on the show, didn't we? But unfortunately, his mobile phone reception didn't allow us to chat to him for too long.
We should get him back on, actually.
Absolutely, we should have Will the Chef regularly. But sounds like a question, doesn't it? Will the Chef, and then ... So yeah, we spoke to Will the Chef when they were doing the meals at Adams Park. But also, Will the Chef has provided, well, what one reporter who was at the Tottenham game described as a packed lunch, but I suppose at the time of day that wasn't wholly appropriate. But basically, members of the media got these packs of food, which included, I'm told, chocolate brownies to die for.
Now, I'm quite jealous about this, because as someone who was lucky enough to go to most of the games sort of before Christmas, one of the things that pretty much every club said in all of the blurb, because when you go as one of the media, you get sent a load of stuff through, normally anyway, but actually, obviously, in these days of COVID and whatever, you get sent loads of stuff through saying, you've got to buy all of the rules and make sure you haven't got a temperature and all that sort of stuff. But they all then say, there'll be absolutely no food. We're really sorry, there won't be any food. There'll be bottles of water, and that's about it. And to be honest, there's a couple of clubs that maybe slightly bend the rules. So Barnsley in particular did give us a goodie bag. It had a couple of Haribos in it and a programme, which, that was perfectly nice. And you've got a little Barnsley carrier bag as well, which was nice. But the fact that Wycombe are now giving out chocolate brownies, I'm quite jealous, because obviously I'm not going to the games anymore. I'm having to watch them at home. So that's above and beyond.
Maybe it was just for the fourth round of the FA Cup as a special thing.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe it is an FA Cup thing. But I think then actually, the people who then only go to the sort of like the Premier League games, the media people, they clearly get quite spoilt.
Yes.
Which it possibly is why they're all slightly don't look like they'd be able to be footballers.
Well, certainly the reporter I spoke to was very impressed with the catering provision at Adams Park last Monday. So as I say, that should have been.
Yeah, well done, Will the Chef.
That should have been in last week's show, really, but if you listen to last week's show, you can sort of insert that in mentally, if you'd like to.
Okay. Yeah, well done for admitting that was your error, Colin.
Available on the podcast. It might make sense now. Excellent inclusion. So, I guess we don't want to dwell too much on a heavy defeat at Brentford, but your quick thoughts.
Yes, very disappointing afternoon. You slightly felt that maybe the writing was on the wall after the first few minutes, because Brentford did look very, very good. But obviously we managed to get back into the game twice. So you were thinking, this might be okay after all. And remember, we have drawn Brentford twice this season. Admittedly in the League Cup, then we lost on penalties, but we held them at Adams Park. And so 2-2 at half time, I think probably everyone was thinking, this is going quite well. We certainly didn't see 5 goals going in against us in the second half. The 3-2 was maybe not a great surprise, and you thought, well, maybe we'll manage to come back into it at 3-3. Then, of course, the referee completely changed the game by giving away, the most ridiculous penalty to Brentford. And then I think it's probably fair to say that basically we slightly lost our heads after that. Definitely Gareth was encouraging them to chase the game, and that partly then resulted in maybe a couple of the goals going in. But yes, 7-2 was a little bit harsh, really. But at the same time, really, they needed to be a little bit more professional after that fourth goal and just put the injustice behind them, and weren't able to do that, which is quite unusual for one of Gareth's teams.
And the manager spoke to Phil after the game.
We've lost our focus on what we were good at in the first half. So the boys have got to be better on that, on the concentration and the focus, because we had a plan and it worked first half. We did really well, but we let Brentford run away with the game with sort of a lack of concentration and focus after feeling hard done by after those two goals. And you let teams get on top like Brentford. They're a good side. They're a very good side, and they're gonna take advantage of that. So, we've had a long discussion after the game. I told them that second half wasn't acceptable, and we'll have to put that right now.
Injured players and ill players as well. Has that played a part today?
Absolutely. You lose players like Tafazoli and Gape and Jacobson, and all three would probably be in the first team, starting 11. So, of course, but then you expect whoever's picked out there to be able to do the job, and that's where we are. I don't think the Championship is that much better, not 7-2 better than Wycombe Wanderers, but today it was, and they're a good side. They're a top manager, and I'm don't take anything away from Brentford. They were super today with their finishes. I think the referee's got a couple of big decisions wrong. The penalty for me is an absolute not. The boy toes the ball, but Fred kicks the ball as well, so it's not a penalty. But we cannot let things like that affect us too much, lose our focus, lose our concentration, and be all at sea. And then, I'll take the blame for one of the goals at the end there, because I opened up to try and get one back. But it's not good enough. But I thought it was one or two positives, a lot of negatives. We've got to get them out on Monday and get ready for Birmingham Tuesday now.
It's a long season, and the gulf in budgets and size of clubs coming into the Championship you would have known about. Did you almost anticipate there would be the odd day like this season?
Yeah, we've had a couple now. We had one away at Blackburn and one away at Brentford. There's two teams who are definitely going to be going for the playoffs and automatic promotion. But I'm not a character who accepts defeats like that well. It hurts me big time. I'll be working these boys very hard this week. We're going to have to probably limit the training because of the legs and the amount of games we've got, but they're going to be sat in front of videos and watching and knowing where they went wrong, and I think one or two have to probably look at themselves as I do after games, and then we'll look at it as a team. But I'm not going to criticise my boys in public. I'm the manager. The buck stops at me. We've lost 7-2 today. I'll take that defeat on the chin, and we'll go again on Tuesday. Well, Monday definitely, but Tuesday at Birmingham.
Tuesday against Birmingham at Adams Park. It'll come thick and fast. Almost, that's a good thing, really, to get this out of the system.
Absolutely. One of the players has said in the dressing room, positive is we've got a game in 3 days to put this right, and I'll be giving my all to make sure they do put it right. They're a great bunch. I'm right with them. For 6-7 years we've been on a successful journey. This is a test now for us, but I firmly believe that my boys will come through this test.
You set a target of 35 points for the second half of the season. You got 15 in the first half. Birmingham City are down at the bottom end nearer Wycombe Wanderers. Does that add more pressure onto that game?
The next 6 games I've looked at, and I think we can be confident in all 6 games. Today, if I'm honest, I knew it would be very tough coming to Brentford, but at half time there's no way I saw 7-2 coming. Absolutely no way. I'm shocked as anyone to see those 5 goals in the second half. We had a couple of chances. It could have been 7-4, 7-5, but it was 7-2. It's not acceptable. We now have to go into these next games believing we're going to win them. We need points on the board, otherwise we're going to get cut adrift. And we always knew it'd be tough, but I didn't realise it'd be days like this. That's a tough one to take for me.
And to find a positive, Uche Ikpeazu's performance, especially in the first half, I'm guessing that's why you've signed him.
yeah, I mean, he's unplayable sometimes, Uche. You know, he's going to cause a lot of problems, but we have to eradicate mistakes. Everybody, you know, the whole 20 people that travel. Let's eradicate all the mistakes we can, because they get punished at this level. Like I say, I'm always proud to be the manager, and again, I'm proud, and I'll take that on the chin. 7-2, buck stops with me. Let's go again on Tuesday.
I remember a wise man tweeting that 3 points would have been nice, but it's the next 6 games that will define the season.
Yes, I remember that as well. Was it Doctor Who? Because he sounded like he was trying to make an appearance at the end there.
Someone's phone not on airplane mode, I think.
I think that's probably what it was. Definitely, the Brentford game, I won't quite call it a free hit, but it felt a bit like that. And obviously Brentford, have got serious Premier League aspirations and look like maybe this is the season that they're finally going to make it there.
They're such an informed team at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, completely. And, Ivan Toney is just wonderful, scored again last night. Whereas, yes, Birmingham, Nottingham Forest, Sheffield Wednesday, these are the games that are very much going to define our season and decide whether or not we are going to have a chance of staying in the Championship. And so, yes, Tuesday night was clearly, in some ways, a lot more important, and very important as well, just to see how actually they then bounce back from the 7-2 defeat. And
how did they bounce back from the 7-2 defeat?
With a rather boring 0-0 draw against Birmingham City. It was okay, but easily Ryan Alsop was the best player on the pitch. He made some fantastic saves, as did Etheridge in the Birmingham goal as well, which, as Gareth will admit to, is what you get normally with a 0-0. We got a point, that was good, but really, particularly considering we'd already beaten Birmingham at home. Again, I'm going to keep saying this, but, if we really do want to stay in the Championship, I think Birmingham at home was probably a game that really we needed to get all 3 points from.
Yes, Birmingham for the taking,
yeah.
Which would have been great. I suppose a point's positive, I guess. It's hopefully a point closer to safety.
Definitely. It was a good point. I think it's just the fact as well that actually everybody else at the moment does seem to be picking up, not only a point here and a point there, but they do all seem to be picking up 3 points. Obviously Rotherham last night won as well. Then, Tuesday night Sheffield, Wednesday and Nottingham Forest both won, obviously, who we're playing next. I can't help now looking back to that Preston game and really, really wishing that had been a league game rather than a cup game. And I think it was such a shame as well that then we had the whole COVID situation where the next 2 games got postponed, because I think actually the bounce that would have given us going into QPR away and Sheffield Wednesday would have been, probably enough to maybe ensure that we at least got 4 points out of those 6. But of course it didn't happen. Then we had the Spurs game and then we had the Brentford game. So now we're slightly picking up the pieces.
And before we hear from Gareth, obviously the game came the day after the transfer window closed, or the night after, I should say.
Yes, indeed. It was a decent transfer window, really, for a start, because we brought in Jordan Abita from Oxford United. And we understand that actually we paid money for him, and that doesn't happen very often with regards to Wycombe Wanderers. I think only once before has Gareth actually parted with some cash.
And another loan signing as well, a return to the club. It's always nice when players return, isn't it?
Indeed, and I know we've said this a lot, but it's interesting how many people do come back to Wycombe. So Namdi Ofabor coming back to us from AFC Bournemouth, again, another really, really good signing.
So great to have those inclusions, and great to hear from Gareth speaking to the media after the 0-0 draw with Birmingham.
Very limited moments of quality out there, a couple of chances. I think what was Premier League was probably the 2 goalkeepers. I think they've both made match-saving saves. Ryan Alsop has come up with a couple, and Etheridge, the one in the first half that's deflected and he's going the wrong way to start with. That was an unbelievable save. So I think if anyone comes out of credit, it's the goalkeepers, and that's usually the story on 0-0. But pleased from Saturday we've progressed a great deal, and that was important to get. Either team probably nicking it would have been unjust. They probably had the share of the chances over us, but pleased that we've battled well against a very strong Birmingham side. They're all 6-footers. They've got a certain way of playing, and like I say, the pitch, the wind, the weather, there was a distinct lack of quality at times, and from both teams. But pleased with the point, and we'll build on that for Saturday now.
Was it the nature of the positions that both sides find themselves in as well?
Yeah, I think so. Both teams don't want to concede, do they? They don't want to. Birmingham have only conceded 8 goals all season away from home, and I wanted to add another one to that. But no, they're superbly set up, as Hancock does with his teams. Very solid. Usually counter-attack you very well. The boy Bella on the left side, I thought, was a real match for Jack Grimmer. Did really well. But at times as well, we had Fred, who was always a threat when Bale come on. I thought we got more of the ball forward. No, we're really pleased with the progression from Saturday. And if we can progress again this Saturday, then that will be a victory. But we've got 5 games coming up now that in and around us, all the teams. Wycombe in the Championship, we celebrate every point and every goal, and that's tonight is a point, so I'll be happy on that one.
Decent debut for Peter?
Yes, I thought he gave me exactly what I thought he would. He's got pace, he's got a bit of calmness, he's got quality on the ball. Going to be a good challenge for Jacobson, without a shadow of a doubt, and I think with only 1 training session under his belt, Namdi Offerball has not even had one yet, so there's 2 there who have come in and given me what I thought they would, and I know there's more to come from both. But Jordan, really pleased, and he'll be very pleased with the clean sheet. There was very little coming down his side from crosses and challenges. But like I say, I think Bella's probably their better winger, and he was very lively. But Jack again, consistent for us this season. So pleased with the back 4. Wish we could have nicked a 1-0, but it wasn't to be.
In important, tough games like that, where you just want to try and nick a win, is it difficult when you have to try and work out whether to stick or twist, and what you do as far as substitutions are concerned?
Yeah, of course. I think Uchi and Admiral have done really well and tired a little bit, and I think they're probably set up to deal with Uchi quite well. So you stick Bale on, and there's a whole different problem there, and a vast amount of experience as well. So Bale probably won his majority of flicks, but Uchi's been fantastic for us this season. He's a revelation, and there's more to come from him. Scotty, I thought maybe the pacing behind would get us in. Nearly did a couple of times, but these defences are a lot more solid in the Championship. We're going to have to make sure we stick our chances in when we get them. It was a tough game, and hopefully we can build on it for Saturday. Like I say, it's going to be a tough run of games now, but that's the Championship.
Sending off, they'll say that it was similar to the one that Grimmer did, but there's simply more force in it. Yeah,
I thought it was very similar to Jack's, but I think the speed of the tackle, the speed of Fred, has probably made it look bad. I don't know. I'll have to see it again on video. And then my quandary was, with 5 minutes to go, with injury time going up, do I open up and go 4-4-2 and try and exploit the extra man? I think if it had been 10 minutes earlier, I think we'd have changed formation. But with 5 minutes to go, the last thing after Saturday was, I didn't want to get beat off 10 men. Well, that would put us lower than a snake's belly. So we're happy with the point. Like I said, it's a progression, and I've got some fresh legs for Saturday as well. Whether I use them or not, we'll see. But pleased with where we are, and had a great window. Long-term planning at this club is looking good. Hopefully we can get points on Saturday.
The final one, these 6 games you know how crucial they are.
Yeah.
Is this the first step, do you think? 5 more now to try and pick up maybe 3 wins?
Yeah, I mean, the games around us, Forest and Sheffield Wednesday, Derby, even Millwall getting dragged into things, so there is some real winnable games, but we are Wycombe Wanderers. I read something in the paper the other day that said Wycombe should celebrate every goal and every point because they shouldn't be nowhere near the Championship, and that's a compliment to me, a real compliment. And if we can keep taking points off big teams, it's fantastic. We've just taken a point off Birmingham City, who 2 or 3 years ago we probably would have been worried about an FA Cup tie against them, but we've matched them, we beat them up there. I think it's a good haul off them. We need to start winning some games if we want to survive. But like I say, Rob and Pete have been fantastic. Long-term planning is really in place here, and looking forward to seeing what we can do Saturday. And just one note, that's Richard Dobson's 500th game as assistant manager as well, so he'll be very pleased with the 0-0. Wish we could have won it for him, but we won't be where we were if it weren't for Richard Dobson either.
Gareth Ainsworth speaking after the 0-0 draw with Birmingham. He also paid tribute after the game to Sandy Durban, who passed away over the weekend. Sandy, somebody who had been associated with the club for a very long time, one of the larger-than-life fans at Wycombe Wanderers, somebody probably best known, certainly in recent years, as being one of the first people that actually you came across as you walked into Adams Park, because she was always selling the programmes in the programme hut right near the gates. After the game, Gareth spoke about her.
When I first came here as a player, Sandy was larger than life, and John Durban, her husband, and what they give you is this feeling of family here. The welcome they give you, they make you feel so inclusive. My family, my friends, they all talk to them, and they all make a special effort to come over and tell them how proud they are of Wycombe, how proud they were of me. And I've had letters off both of them in the past congratulating us and thanking us for what we've done at Wycombe. And really, it should be the other way around. You know, we should be thanking fans like that, because they give up their time, their effort. I know that they were volunteers for the club. And yeah, Sandy Durban is going to be absolutely sorely missed, like you wouldn't believe. From me, from all the players knew her. It was great. You didn't not know Sandy. You had to know her. She was that kind of character, and it's a huge loss for the Wycombe family. And our sympathies go out to all the family, the friends, and especially John, who was by her side. They will never be forgotten, and I thought that it was a really nice moment that the boys went over to clap her seat just before the game. And I said in the dressing room before the game, Sandy Durban, and that's all I had to say. Everyone knew, everyone knows who she is, and like I say, she'll live on in Wycombe history for a long, long time.
A really nice tribute, and as we were sort of discussing earlier, the club do that sort of thing very well.
They really do. I mean, you know, sadly, there have been a good few instances over the past couple of years. And yes, the club are, fantastic just in how they pay tribute to fans and players who sadly are no longer with us. It was a really lovely tribute, particularly the players obviously going over and clapping Sandy's seat, and then Gareth putting flowers on it as well. But she will be very much missed.
Coming up next on the Wycombe Wanderers Show, we'll be talking to the chairman of the Wycombe Wanderers Ex-Players Association, Alan Hutchinson.
Wycombe Sound.
Still to come on this evening's Wycombe Wanderers Show, we'll be hearing from midfielder David Wheeler talking on today's Time to Talk Day to Wycombe fan Tom Hancock.
But first, if you're a regular listener to the show, you'll know that we often get to speak to a number of ex-players from a number of different generations of the club, and a big thank you to JDT from the Wycombe Wanderers Ex-Players Association, but also the chairman, Alan Hutchinson, who I'm very pleased to say joins us this evening. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you a bit about the Ex-Players Association in a sec, but I thought it'd be brilliant to find out a bit more, first of all, about your own kind of affiliation with the club, which goes back quite a long way.
Long way. In fact, it was extraordinary. I spent the first 4 years of my life living with my grandparents in the London Road. My mother was with me, but we were waiting for Dad to come back after the war. And it was a lovely house, and to the right was the Nag's Head pub, and then across on the left-hand side was the cricket ground. And if you crossed over the road and you walked along a little way over a bridge onto the right. Now, all three of those places were established with Wycombe Wanderers, all three of them. And this just kept on and going and going. I wrote all this down a long while ago, and I called it unavoidable, because to steer clear of Wycombe Wanderers for me was totally and utterly unavoidable. We moved into a house in Saffron Platt after the 4 years we'd spent there, which was owned by my grandmother, and it was number 2. And it looked right the way down Eastern Terrace, down to the top of Stewart Road, but directly opposite the house on the corner there was this large building which had now become a house, but across the road in the wall on the top of the main door was the Compasses. Now the Compasses was a very famous pub because in 1884 4 boys met under a gas lamp and decided to launch a club called North Town Wanderers. At the top of the road was the Mason's Arms, where they used to play and go and get dressed to play and come down Saffron Platt, down the alleyway past Trinity Church, over onto the Rye. And after the game was over, they then go up to get washed in the stable yard at the back. and then off they'd go. Just round the corner from Saffron Platt was Railway Place. And at the top of Railway Place was a pub called the Steam Engine. Now, the Steam Engine was where they held their meeting in 1887, which was in the lower ground floor, to decide the name change from Northtown Wanderers to Wycombe Wanderers. And this just went on and on and on and on. It was extraordinary. I mean, at the top of Stewart Road, Norman Williams lived there. Now, Norman had been the captain of the club in the 1930s. Round the corner in Evelyn Road, number 6, was where the first secretary of the club lived, Jim Ray. And it was just impossible for me to escape anything to do with Wycombe Wanderers. And then when my grandfather left Nichols and Janes, he was the master carver there at Nichols and Janes, and he retired in 1948, and he started taking me on walks all over the place. And one of the walks he took me to was up at what was Spring Meadow, where the club used to play, because they didn't have a ground of their own, but it was where they used to play. But then they wanted to get into the FA Amateur Cup and FA Cup, so they had to get a ground that was closed. And of course, the ideal situation was Wycombe Cricket Club, because they never had anything happening in the winter. So they agreed to let the Wanderers play on their ground in the winter, away from where the pitch was, so that they could compete in the FA Amateur Cup and the FA Cup. And so all these stories went on and on and on. It was just fantastic. Then I discovered some years after we moved into the building in number 2, was it used to be the former home of Sonny Lane, who was a very famous player for the club in the 1890s. And so, you know, there you go. It's absolutely incredible stuff.
And you've seen, obviously, the transfer to Lokes Park, or in your capacity, haven't you? Was it your grandfather that played the first game at Lokes Park?
Yeah, no, it was my grandfather. My grandfather played for Wycombe Gordons, who were a very, very big club, a very well-known club back then. But it was my Uncle Albert, who was the brother of his father's brother. Ah. And he played in the last game up at Spring Meadow and the first game at Lokes Park.
And also, I read, I didn't know this, that you were a right winger yourself for the reserves.
Well, yeah, only for a very short time, though. Only for a very short time, because I was working in Fleet Street at the time, and I'd been there a short while. I knew I'd never get in the first team. I wasn't good enough to play first-team football. But I'd had offers to go and play for Chalfont St Peter and a couple of other offers for other clubs. But I got this great job come up, and it really was a terrific job. But I had to work 2 Saturdays a month and 2 Sundays a month. So it meant that I couldn't play football. And also with all the other hours involved, I couldn't train on a Thursday night, a Tuesday or a Thursday. So I just had to pull back. I just took the decision, working is going to be a lot longer than playing football. So I took the decision to carry on working.
Very prudent. But you've had a number of other roles at the club as well. People might know you as a press officer, obviously, which you were for a long time, but also the secretary as well, and other roles too.
Yes, I did. Well, the thing was that I always had connections with the club, because when my grandfather took me to the first match at Lokes Park in 1952, I was 8 years old, and he introduced me to Reg Boreham. So I met Reg Boreham, and that was great, because it became very, very useful later on. There was an incident in 74. I think it was in the summer of 74, I think it happened. Or it might have been 75, leading up to the start of 75, 76 season, when a friend of mine, Chris Avery, who worked for a printers in Marlow, Precision Press, got in touch with me, and I was at the Bucks Free Press at the time. He got in touch with me, he said, can you come over and have a quick word? He said, I need to talk to you about something. So I went to see him, and he said, all the program's just not selling. He said, it's a disaster. He said, we're printing these copies, and every time the print run changes because it gets smaller and smaller. He said, any ideas, anything you could do for us? You've been attached to the club a long time, you know an awful lot of people. Is there something you could do? So I said, well, I'll go and think about it. Anyway, I came up with a decision to write a series of articles based on players I knew and met from the 1920s up to the 1950s. so that we could do different articles on different players in those eras and change them every match, so we get a different story going out. And this is where Reg Boreham suddenly came very handy to me, because I walked around to see him and I said, I know you've got numbers for some of these people, but I've done a list here. Is it possible you could give me the telephone numbers or addresses for these players? Oh, come back and see me in a couple of days. It'd take me a couple of days to do that. So I went back in 2 days, and sure enough, he'd done this list for me. Now, the interesting thing about that list is that he had formed an old players' association back at that time, but they never did anything. I mean, there is just names on a list, but they never met up, they never went anywhere, and occasionally they'd meet up in an odd game here and there at the club, but there was nothing specific organised for them to do. So I thought about that. I just thought about that, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, did these series of articles, and it was incredible, because at the end of that season, 75-76, the club won the award for the highest sales of programmes in non-league football in the country. The sales went up to 86%, which was quite extraordinary. And so that was something that gave me a big lift. And because I've known so many people at the club, I used to get certain offers from time to time about doing things there. And I said, well, I can't, because I have to think about it. You know, I was in Fleet Street for a long, long time, and then I went into the film industry, and so on and so on. And in the end, it meant that being at the Free Press gave me a bit more time at the weekends to spend with my family. So I decided I wouldn't do anything there and then. But, yeah, interesting stuff.
No, definitely. Obviously, your knowledge of the club is something that really stands out. You could be called a Wikipedia. But after all the time that you spent, obviously, with the club and studying it, what would you say is what makes it so special?
Oh, I think it was the atmosphere at the place. It was incredibly special. It didn't matter what... This is why I wanted to form the ex-players, because I could see from all the players I'd known from the 1920s right up to the present day, they all had these individual stories, they all liked doing certain things, and yet they never met up. I mean, if I tell you one of the things happened, what I was looking for it to happen, at one of our golf days, when Keith Ryan, after he played his round, had played with two boys that had played for the club in the 50s, and he came to me and he said, Hutch, I can't tell you what I've had a day today. He said, and I think I can't remember who he was playing with, but it was a player from his era, which had been the 90s, and he was playing with these two. And he said, what a day I've had today. He said, I can't tell you. He said, it was absolutely brilliant. He said, it was nothing but golf and stories, and we spent the whole afternoon cracking up with laughter. And of course it meant that wherever they went, they'd known these people, and when we used to have other events of ours, they'd all chat to each other and meet up, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger. And this was the reason, because the club was like that in whatever era you played. Didn't matter what era it was. I remember the 50s. They played with Sid Khan, and he was a superb coach, but he wasn't the best person of talking to the players. They sort of just listened, but, you know, he never got really close to them, but he was a superb coach. But they all got together. They were all close with each other, and it showed off the field and on the field. And so it went right the way through. Whoever came in as the manager, the players were there, and they just wanted to be together. It was just a wonderful atmosphere at the club.
That seems to be what makes it, is the character. You know, the players that we've spoken to, you know, in the past, they've said how the wives and girlfriends would travel together and the whole team would go out for meals, and it just seems like another sort of time, but a brilliant sort of collaboration of men, if you like.
Oh, totally and utterly. And it was like this when Martin O'Neill came. I mean, he couldn't believe the atmosphere. He used to say, he said, the atmosphere is fantastic here. He said, they all get on so well. I said, yeah, but it's been like that throughout the whole of history at this club. I said, I knew a lot of the players from the 1920s, and, you know, they were just the same. I mean, real characters. I mean, I must tell you one particular story, which is hilarious. I went to do an interview with one of the players who played in the 1920s, and he was a terrific player, and his name was Colin Smith, Klon, and he lived up at Terriers, just up the road from the Royal Grammar School. And I went and knocked on his door, and I said, "Oh, Colin, I've come to do an interview." Yeah, come in. Went into this little room where he was sitting in a chair in front of the fire, which was going away. And we were having a chat away there, and I said to him, "Oh, you played in the game with the Spartan League versus the FA Amateur Cup winners." I said, "In a special game at Loke Spark." "Oh, yes," he said. He said, "Unfortunately, we got done 4-2. He said, "But I had a bet with the goalkeeper, Jim Kipping." He said, "I'd score." So I said, "Oh, really?" So he said, "Oh, yes." I said, "Did you?" "Oh, of course I did." And he jumped up out of his chair, and he said, "I went back to the goal like this." He said, "The ball came to me. I went this way, turned round, spun away, and I belted it with my left foot, and it went flying, and his slipper came off and went in the fire." I had to jump up to drag it out before it caught light, patted it down so it was on. He said, "God, blimey." He said, "You were nearly as quick as me." And he was 86.
Wow. It is fantastic as well that so many different generations of players get to share their stories, whether they played at Wembley, perhaps it was in 57 or one of the FA Trophy finals or a playoff final, and they can share those experiences.
Yes, exactly right. And it's all important. And of course, when I wanted to launch the ex-players, I thought about it for a number of seasons. I really did. And it gave me a long time to lay out how I wanted it to happen, that we would meet every month at the club so that we could discuss what would be happening, that we have a member from each era that was still able to attend would be a member of the committee. And it's worked absolutely superbly because each member of the committee knows all the players he played with. And that makes it good. Because when we were building the total up over the years when we launched in 2008, it was important to have a situation where you could say to somebody, like John Maskell was brilliant. He was the first person I called because I knew how good he'd be. I met him at the club when he was a player, and his attitude to everything was just superb. And he could have a real giggle and a real laugh, but when he became a serious person, you would listen to what he had to say because he talked nothing but common sense. And so you could rely on people like that. And that's why we've got such a good group. John Taylor was somebody that I knew I was going to have because the sheer ability with the computer and what he can do is just unbelievable. And we needed his ability to be able to really put us on the map, which he's done. Because, anything we need to get for our dinner, our annual dinner, put pictures on the wall or move. He's just absolutely terrific at it. And there are other people on the committee too that have been absolutely excellent. I mean, we got Brian Lee on it now, which is marvellous. To have the former manager of the club who was so successful in those amateur days, he's now on our committee.
No, that is fantastic. And another aspect which people may not be aware of is the fantastic money you raise both for charity and also to put back into the club.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, absolutely. It was something we wanted to do. We discussed all these things before we really launched the ideas. We talked about the money, what we were going to do with it, how it will work. And it's been absolutely brilliant. And it's benefited so many people, not just at the club, but outside the club, but local people. And that works very well indeed.
And also, you speak to these ex-players, and they're so grateful for the opportunity to meet other generations, and the work that you and JDT do to bring them together. And it's one of the biggest, I think, in the country. There's so many members that you've got. You must be so pleased with how it's grown.
It is the biggest in the country because all the big pro clubs like Man United and all the other teams, an ex-player there just rings up and they leave a ticket for him on the front desk. So he arrives, grabs his ticket and goes to the game, which is great. I mean, because they can afford to do all that and organise all that. But to get an ex-players association is outstanding for us because we were originally an amateur football club. And we didn't go into the pro game until Martin O'Neill arrived and took us in there in the 90s. So you got these two sections of players, one that were amateurs and two that were professionals. And this is why it was important to bring the two together. And this is why they're so entertaining. It's so much fun to be with when we're at our annual dinner, which we hold every year at the club in November. Then we have a golf day. We've got several other events we do. A quiz night, which is really great. and so on. And because we hold these events throughout the season, don't get the same people there, because there are some people who don't play golf, there are others who aren't interested in quizzes, and so on. But because you get this different range of people in the events, it really is superb.
Well, it's fantastic to hear about the Ex-Players Association and the work that you do, and look forward to hearing from more of them in the future. And thank you so much, as I say, for your help with arranging for us to speak to them as well.
Okay, jolly good, my pleasure.
Alan Hutchinson, the chairman of the Wycombe Wanderers Ex-Players Association, speaking to us here at Wycombe Sound.
This is Wycombe Sound.
Welcome back to the Wycombe Wanderers Show. Really, really interesting to hear from Alan Hutchinson, particularly mentioning about the fact that Wycombe were still an amateur club until really the days of Martin O'Neill, which just doesn't sound very long ago. Anyway, today was a Time to Talk day, where we're all encouraged to talk more about our mental health and how we are feeling. Phil Catchpole on his Ringing the Blues podcast, which is always excellent and that you can find simply by searching online for Ringing the Blues, arranged for Wycombe fan Tom Hancock to have a chat to midfielder David Wheeler.
In a football club especially, there generally is a lot of money flying around. There's people are paid well for what they do, despite obviously having a short career, but there are options and possibilities there if the will is there to have a resident sports psychologist in the building. And for most clubs, an improvement would just be to have someone coming in once a week, but to have someone in 2 or 3 times a week would have such an incredibly huge positive impact on the whole environment of the club and the mental well-being of the players, but also their mental capacities on the pitch, putting all the mental health, personal mental health to one side, even though I think that's a bit of a misnomer, because I think the two go hand in hand. There's so much scope to improve performance on the pitch through psychological means that is just is not being tapped into at all. But yet it's a given that we have a physiotherapist, it's a given that we have massage therapists, it's a given that we have analysts, it's a given that we have sports scientists, it's a given that we have a strength and conditioning coach, and yet there's so much psychology in being a professional footballer, and yet for some reason across the board we don't see it as something that needs to be a regular thing, something that's a mainstay on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand as well. But yeah, again, I think that's kind of a reflection of society in general. It's, mental health services are often the ones you hear first about cuts being made to, and, waiting times, and it can be really hard to kind of access that. Last September, use of antidepressants was at an all-time high. And I think that can be seen as, that they don't necessarily work for everyone. Like the medication route doesn't work for everyone. I mean, I've tried various things, more like anti-anxiety stuff, and I don't know, for me, I didn't like the way it felt. And I found other sort of means much more helpful to kind of get back on track. But yeah, I think, the fact that even as recently as, the last couple of years, the last time I actually kind of needed to kind of talk to anyone about anything, I think it was about a 3-month wait. Yeah, I felt I wasn't in a really awful place or feeling suicidal or anything or any of that. I was getting by. But yeah, I think it's worrying that people who are in that kind of situation, who might not, I can't put myself in those shoes because I've not been there, but I can't imagine it's particularly easy to come out and say, yeah, I'm feeling this way, I need help now. People aren't always going to read it necessarily. Aren't going to kind of read how you're feeling. Then yeah, there needs to be, you need to have instant, there is a certain level of emergency care.
But I think the point is that it's obviously prevention is better than cure a lot of the time, isn't it? And I think it's to get you before you drop into that level of being an emergency potentially. That's the key, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and there's not even enough there, I don't think, to stop.
But I think also there's a cultural thing with British people, I think, compared to some other countries, is that we don't necessarily want to embellish on our personal feelings and thoughts, and we don't want to. We say, oh no, I'm okay, I'm fine. Come in as simple as a greeting, say, oh, how you doing? Oh yeah, fine. Everyone says that every day, but it's almost never true.
That is an incredibly British thing, I think, as well, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah, it's just like, well, no, it isn't most of, like, you know, a large proportion of the time. But it is sort of, the hat sort of stiff upper lip thing, I think, still exists to a large extent.
If I'm like, yeah, I can definitely, there's definitely a distinction as well. Like, if I'm sort of, I don't know, by text or something, I might say, no, I'm not all right, this is up. But if I'm, in the morning you see someone, or, bump into someone out and about, how's it going? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. I've never said anything other than, we laugh about it, but I think that it's so hard to get to a stage where, like, to sort of denormalise that. That's just so deeply ingrained. You're not going to suddenly flick a switch and have everyone going, no, I'm awful, and become really blunt and open about it.
I think we almost need to, try and normalise being an oversharer. Like, I remember not that long ago when I was, well, I'll say that, it feels like ages ago when I was at the barber's, I was sat next to a guy who was a proper oversharer. And I was like, oh, this guy's getting a bit much now. I don't want to hear about everything about his life. But we almost need to get to that stage where when someone asks you that you get on with, if someone asks you, oh, how you doing? Like, you're like, actually, X, Y, and Z is bothering me. Rather than being like, yeah, it's fine. And then just like, that's you know, we almost need to try and change that way of thinking.
Yeah.
But I think coming back to the football side of things and my insight into the football world and being a professional footballer is that if you look at it on relatively simple terms, the majority of scenarios for a footballer are negative on a day-to-day basis. So, say for example, for a normal week, building up to a Saturday match, there's only really one scenario where, if you're just looking at, because obviously, you know, the different players have different levels of being able to cope with disappointment, which is a psychology thing. It's whether you have that naturally or if you've learned about psychology, then you can cope with disappointment better than other people. But by and large, the only thing where you're going to be elated and where you're going to be happy and feel like things are going well is if you win.
Yeah.
Maybe you score. You've started the game and you don't get injured and you play well. So these 5 things all have to happen simultaneously for you to be like, yeah, that was really good. I'm really happy with that. Really chuffed. That went really well that weekend. But for the chances of those 5 things happening all simultaneously for just one player are quite slim. It is a case of not getting too down about things, not getting too high when we...
Never too high, never too low. That's kind of been the way.
That's probably a good parallel for mental health generally, I'd say. Like, never too high, never too low, but also never getting too ahead of yourself and never dwelling too much on the past.
Yeah, I think also kind of more, it's probably been more difficult this season for fans to kind of stay level, I mean, as it has for anyone throughout the whole last 12 months. I think you'll get people with varying opinions on this. I mean, for me, I'm happy to still be able to watch the game. Obviously, I want to be there. I'd rather be there than watching on a screen, but I've watched a lot more football than I would ordinarily do.
This is a really interesting thing for me is that because my dad and my uncle and family members, they say, oh, it's all that's getting me through this pandemic is being able to watch the footy. And obviously, like there's loads of people that couldn't care less whether the football's on or not, or maybe sick of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested from your perspective and maybe from other fans that you've spoken to about how important is it, even without being able to go, that it remains something they can watch and still feel a part of.
I mean, I know there's been a bit of a discussion kind of going on about, paying for season tickets and then only being able to get a stream, but a lot of people are happy for the club to keep the money from season tickets and are happy to have been able to watch it and have got value out of that. And obviously we're able to watch you know, a normal season, you have your season ticket, you go to your 23 home games, you might not do many aways. This season, we've been able to watch literally every game. I mean, yeah, certainly when it's your own team, I think that's probably a positive. More generally, yeah, I'm quite happy I will watch anything. I watch like German football and most of the Premier League games. That's just me. I will watch pretty much anything, and let's face it, what else is there to do at the moment? But yeah, I think it's good, but I think it's also frying people's brains a bit, maybe. You can get too much of a good thing.
Yeah, no, but I just wonder. I see it on social media quite a lot. You know, where people put comments up about whether, you know, questioning whether football should be carrying on during a global pandemic, and yeah, justifiably, really. And then there seems to often be a huge backlash of people saying, "Oh, people's mental health need it. People's mental health, they need it to have something to look forward to stay positive."
And I think you can say that about a lot of things. And obviously football is definitely the most popular spectator sport, just one of the most popular leisure activities probably out of anything, whether that's art stuff or whether it's sport or whatever. Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to have had it carry on. But, I mean, I think we're past the point now where, because there was that kind of, there did feel like there was going to be a bit of a touch and go moment at the beginning of the year when COVID was getting extremely out of control. I mean, you can't, you know, it's still bad. Clearly, it's still really bad. I think we're past the point of any debate over actually stopping the season. But yeah, just thinking back to last year, it was 3 months? Even that 3 months, which was basically the same length as a normal off-season. Yeah, I just felt completely empty. Yeah, I think I don't want to be too profound on this and say, it's given me a newfound appreciation for it or anything, but I think it's helped me chill out about it a bit and be less kind of, have my mood less dependent on it.
You can hear the full interview by going to the Ringing the Blues podcast. All you have to do is search for Ringing the Blues. It will come up. It's this week's episode. It's a Phil Catchpole's podcast. Many thanks for allowing us to play that. David Wheeler there speaking to Tom Hancock.
It was a really, really good listen. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was. It was excellent, you know, and really interesting. Actually, just hearing them both. And as I said beforehand, you know, it wasn't really an interview. Actually, it was just you know, you felt like you were just listening to two blokes having a chat about mental health. I thought it was really interesting, particularly all of the bits about, you know, people. You say, "How are you?" and someone says, "I'm fine." And yes, you know, sometimes maybe just dig a little bit deeper than that.
Really thought-provoking. In fact, fine can mean so many different things, can't it? Because you say, "How are you?" and they say, "Fine," or there's "fine," or "fine."
Yes.
There's so many fines.
Yes, you can imagine speaking to Gareth after the Brentford game. You know,
how was that performance? Fine.
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 You know, whereas the Birmingham one would be a bit more, fine.
So hopefully Nottingham Forest next. That's one of the 6, isn't it? So I think we're down to 5 now, though, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, we are. You know, which is getting slightly worrying because I think we hoped that maybe we'd have 3 points from the first one. Chris Hughton, obviously in charge now of Nottingham Forest, saying on Twitter, Wycombe have found this season difficult, but they are still a very competitive side who will battle for every single ball and make life extremely tough for us, which is great to hear. But at the same time, does make me slightly think the trouble is the fact that we're now playing all of these teams again. They now realise that actually, you know, that we're not going to be a pushover, that we're not going to be a walkover, and so are probably going to try slightly extra hard. But as I've said all season, you know, this is the sort of game where actually we really need to start seeing those performances that Wycombe have put in against some of the really good teams. Thinking of the Watford game, thinking of the game against Bournemouth, where, you know, they've performed and we thought, wow, well, you know, if we play like that every week, we'll easily stay in the Championship. We haven't really put those games in against the teams that are down around us, and, you know, Saturday would be a fantastic place to start.
And Gareth mentioning as well that he's got some fresh legs to bring in, which is quite hopeful.
Yes, yeah, you know, that's good. I mean, you know, we've got a decent squad now, actually, when you think about it. And, you know, particularly if a few players could come back from injury as well, and that would be really great. But, you know, there is, particularly going forward, there's a huge amount of talent there. Obviously we've got Uchi and Admiral, then you've got Bayo, and Scott, obviously, are sort of like warming the bench at the moment and coming on. You've still got Alex Samuel there as well. You've obviously got Fred, you know, there's so David Wheeler as well, you know, so many different players that can play in the midfield, but also are brilliant going forward. So you know, there are a lot of options that Gareth now has.
And Gareth too, of course.
And Gareth too, as well, absolutely. And he signed a new contract as well this week. So, you know, so that, again, that was a good bit of news for us.
So it all sounds really positive, doesn't it? Or do we keep saying that? And then?
Well, I think we probably do keep saying that. I think it's quite good that we're saying that after, a 0-0 and a 7-2. But yes, it is still positive. But, we could do with this time next week talking about that we've got 6 points from our last 2 games, because if we haven't, then I think maybe we do have to start having some slightly more realistic conversations, Colin.
Although I do think it is really encouraging that it's still only February and there are still loads of points to play for.
That is very, very true. And, and all of those postponements that we have recently had, do just mean that actually there is still a long way to go in the season, even though we are now into February.
It's a tough road to hoe.
It is indeed.
Please see previous episodes of the show for an explanation of that. We're back next week at the same time.